Good evening, guys. It is about 11 o'clock at night, and we are here in the harvest room with about 30 pounds of honey. So, part of what we do at Ben's Valley Honey is small harvests under 100 pounds, and we're at a point right now in the season where we're transitioning from a tulip poplar blend into basswood honey just coming in. And I'm trying to get the tulip poplar pulled as they're capping it so I can make a determination of what is what. So we pulled 8 frames today. There's probably about, if I had to guess, 300 pounds in the bee yard right now that is not capped. One of the frames that I did pull today was actually basswood that's in this mix, but it's largely still tulip poplar. So we're going to show you what we do when we do very small batches, which is what you're probably going to do when you're first starting out. Second year beekeepers with just a couple of hives. So we've got our plastic honey bucket with the gate on it. We've got a lid sitting on top just to keep anything out of it as far as dust, etc. And we've got some jars set up. And I've got both a 12-ounce jar, which holds 1 pound of honey, and then I've got some quart jars for some customers that are refills as well. And I don't remember quite how much they hold, 40 or 42 ounces. So the first step in the process that we do when we small batch harvest typically is just pick the honey with a honey rake, and I just rake it real quick, throw it in the hand crank extractor, spin it out, and then through a metal strainer and into the bucket. We do not filter our honey. We only send it through a metal strainer. We do raw, unheated, small batches. So once we get into the bucket, I give it some good stirs just to get everything mixed together. And we do check it with the refractometer. And if you can see, I discussed this in one of the previous videos. You calibrate it with extra virgin olive oil. There's a dial on there for calibration. You want to make sure that it's set properly. And then you just, and it's sticky right now. You put a nice little drop of honey on there, and I just use a spoon, and then shut it, make sure it's sealed so all the air is out of it, and then you just look through it like you would a periscope or a pair of binoculars, and you're probably not going to be able to see, but it came in at, I think, around 17.6, something like that, 17 and a half, give or take. And there's an adjustment on it to let you know exactly how clear it is. Yeah, we're at about 17.4 on this batch. So it does vary frame by frame, but once we know where we're at, I'm comfortable with that number. I don't like seeing above 18. If I see it above 18, which I haven't anytime recently, I set that aside and use it for personal use. I do not sell anything that high. I'm just not comfortable in that range. So we're getting ready to bottle, and I'm going to walk you through the process. This is an Escali scale brand-wise, and it's rated as one of the most accurate, inexpensive scales out there. They run, I don't know, $35, give or take. So the first step in the process is to what's called tear out your scale, and that's T-A-R-E. So some scales have on-off tear all in the same, and you hit the button, you put your first jar on there, and it'll zero it out weight-wise. Some you turn it on, and the tear button's the second button. We want to make sure we're set on ounces, which is what we measure by here in Pennsylvania. And this is what they call a ball 3/4 jar. And it is a 12-ounce jar, but it holds a pound of honey. So once we get that underneath, it's teared off. I open the honey gate very slowly, loosen the dial, and I just start it flowing and make sure I'm centered. If I need to adjust my scale, I do that, sliding it left or right to make sure that my jar is centered on the scale, and we'll just let her run. The downside to these plastic honey buckets with the plastic gate is they are messy. So I do keep a towel, microfiber towel that's damp off to the side. watching my numbers. I'm up at about 12 and a half now. It is about 82, 83 degrees in this room. So the honey's flowing nicely. And we're at about 15 and a half. So I slow it down by pushing it downwards some. And we always make sure that we give a little over a pound. So 1605, I close it, I tighten it, and I move to the next jar. And I give that little spot right there a wipe off. And repeat the process. Now, you're going to have in the top of your honey a couple of things going on. Number one, so there's going to be a little bit of foam going on the top, and that's going to settle out. Some people take plastic cling wrap and remove that foam. We don't. When I get down to the foam, I just make sure I add a little extra honey to compensate for it. The other thing is when your lid is on your bucket, make sure your lid is loose. On our plastic bucket, you're going to set it on there loosely, but on our Hilco, which is the metal one, there is a silicone gasket. So that has to be offset or you will vapor lock your bucket and you'll bubble and you're going to have honey just go everywhere. So keep in mind you don't want your lid on your bucket tight, and you want to make sure that you're always doing your honey by weight and not by volume. In the state of Pennsylvania, that is a requirement, and your weight needs to be it needs to be weight ounces versus fluid ounces. So with honey being heavier than water, obviously this jar is going to hold more. And we are almost there at 1605, and now we're at 1615. So everybody gets a little extra. It comes in between a little over 16. So once that's done, if you feel the need, if you've got some dripping off the side, like right there, I just take that clean towel, wipe that. If you're gonna wipe the top rim, make sure you're using a clean paper towel to do that, not the towel that you've set and moved around, etc. So once that's done, we put our lid on, and I just flip. Yeah, good job, Lisa. I just flip it on. I'm doing it left-handed instead of right, and it gets set off to the side. So lid goes on, it gets sealed up, and this is a tulip poplar honey. It is a little bit darker than some of the previous batches we have, and I don't think I have any of the previous. That's also tulip poplar. So once we're done, label goes on it, date goes on it, and straight to the customer. So that's all there is to it, guys. It's not that difficult when you're starting out. The worst part is when you get to the end of the bucket and you need to tilt the bucket. There are some great little tilted stands, DIY honey bucket stands that you can make with a piece of plywood and a couple pieces of 2x4s to hold your bucket at an angle. If that's something that you're worried about, usually when I get down to the bottom, I just tilt it. So I thank you all for watching tonight, and if you have any questions, feel free to message them, like, subscribe, follow. We appreciate you guys, and have a good evening.